Hey there, my love. It's me, CP, and I've got a question for you. Are you feeling a little overwhelmed and out of the loop when it comes to your bookkeeping? Doing your books? Well, I'm not surprised if you're shaking your head vigorously yes right now. When I first started out, I had no clue about bookkeeping. I mean, I knew I was supposed to do it and I knew that it was important, but I had no concept of what those terms meant, what the process should look like, what I should do, and why it was even significant to my business. But over the years, I have learned a whole lot about the importance of bookkeeping and how critical keeping your books, understanding your finances are to the future growth of your business. I mean, you cannot get to a 7-figure business or even a 6-figure business if you have no idea what's going on with your finances. And the first important piece of understanding that is with your bookkeeping. So, if you want to see what it means in order to keep your books, the basics of what that looks like, what your process should include, and what all of those terms mean, then you are going to definitely want to keep watching, because today I am going to teach you just that. All the basics of bookkeeping. And I'm not going to do it alone. I'm actually bringing in an expert, my bookkeeper.
Big dog, we got a situation here. I'm going to need some backup.
Her and I are going to walk you through the basics so that you can be empowered as the CEO of your empire in understanding your numbers, understanding how to keep track of your numbers and use those numbers, but most importantly, understanding how to lead and manage by those numbers. So, if you're ready, I am. I'm ready. Let's head on over to my computer, grab my bookkeeper, and get to work. All right, CPTVers, it is so exciting for us to be here today with a very special guest, my bookkeeper, Michelle Crane. And we are going to get to the nitty gritty. I mean, I thought it was going to be best for us to tap into an expert to talk through some of the things that you're definitely going to want to consider and focus on when you are putting up your financial structure and getting your bookkeeping together. I am so excited to have you here with us today, Michelle. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here with us and giving us some of those golden nuggets and knowledge that we as entrepreneurs, especially new ones, definitely need in order to make sure that we are setting ourselves up for a strong financial future. And I want to go ahead and give a little bit of insight into who you are and what you do, and also let everyone know that Michelle is definitely an amazing bookkeeper and ready to help if you guys need it. So from a young age, Michelle Crane was trained in sales as well as finances by her entrepreneurial parents. She received her bachelor's degree in both math and economics, providing the strong foundation needed for this industry. Bookkeeping combines her passion of aiding business owners with her love of numbers. Where others see messy books and complicated math equations, she sees an intriguing challenge that she can't wait to tackle. As the owner and chief bookkeeping professional at Crane Shot Solutions, LLC, Michelle helps businesses in a wide range of industries, as well as real estate investors, make sense of their numbers and empowers them to make informed financial decisions. She is a QuickBooks Online Pro advisor, an Intuit certified bookkeeper, and is involved in extensive networks of bookkeeping professionals, including the Digital Bookkeepers Association. Michelle also provides outsourced CFO services through her newest venture, Crane CFO. Her business has grown by word of mouth from grateful clients and delighted accountants, and she looks forward to helping as many businesses as she can. Welcome to CPTV, Michelle Crane.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
So,
I'm
Michelle,
excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. I'm so excited to have you here. And to let everyone know how important it really is for them to, kind of get their bookkeeping together. I know from my own experiences and just working with entrepreneurs for so many years, that bookkeeping is probably the last thing on the list of things that we enjoy doing. So I think it's amazing that you love it.
I do. Right?
The world needs so many Michelle.
There are unicorns like me that love numbers. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, it is. It's definitely a skill and a talent. And I want to make sure that our audience, especially our newer entrepreneurs, understand the basics of bookkeeping and what they really need to do. Because as you know, numbers, as much as we may hate them, when you're a CEO or a business owner, you have to begin to kind of create that mindset and train your mind to understand that the numbers that are going on in your business is something that you need to be aware of, but also they really do help you make concrete, viable decisions. They kind of eliminate that confusion and that stress of whether or not you're making the right decision. Because if the numbers say you should get rid of this, or you should add this, or you should increase your pricing, or you
Right.
should decrease your pricing, the numbers will tell you, and you should actually move forward with it. And there's no guessing games. And I oftentimes
Absolutely.
get questions from my CPTVers and from entrepreneurs all over the world as to how to price their products and programs. Um,
Mm,
and one of the things that I tell them all the time is when you're first picking a price, you'll pick that price and you're going to test it out.
yeah.
But once you have a full, even 6 months of financial data in your business, it makes it so much easier for you to be able to really find that perfect price point so that you can hit that profitability, and be able to make the right decision about what you should be charging folks. And the numbers will actually tell you. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to dive into some bookkeeping stuff and for you to impart your knowledge on the CPTV family.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. And like you said, it's the last thing on people's minds. You're running a business, you're building a business, you're getting going. It's always gets pushed to the back burner, and I totally get it. It's not fun for a lot of people. It is for
It's
me, but
not.
not for a lot of people. So
I can
it's so
testify. It
yeah,
sucks.
it's so easy to just kind of like, nah, we'll do that later. That's a problem for future me. But what I find is exactly that. The sooner you get it started, and whether you're doing it yourself or partnering with someone, the sooner you get started, the more knowledge you have to make those decisions, those critical decisions in that first year of your business that could make or break you and really point your business in the direction that it needs to go.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we've already started talking about it, but I really want to dive into, why is bookkeeping so important for a small business, and especially a new entrepreneur? I mean, I know I touched on it, being able to choose your products and services as one of those pieces, but why else would you say bookkeeping is so critical? And how can it really impact your ability to scale and grow and kind of get to that 7-figure business that all
Hmm.
entrepreneurs are kind of striving for?
For sure. Well, I think a lot of people, first off, they equate bookkeeping with taxes, and bookkeeping is obviously we're in the same, you know, industry there. However, everybody is going to eventually need to file their taxes. The best way to reduce that tax liability is to be able to keep track of each and every legitimate business expense along the way, so you can reduce that taxable income. So that is the tax. That's my extent of my tax knowledge. I don't do taxes. I don't do it. I won't do it. What I do is I'm there, I partner with people every step of the way each month so that they can make sure exactly that they're making those business decisions their based on the real numbers. So we make sure we have all that income accounted for. We make sure we have all those expenses accounted for. We make sure we know exactly where we're at and exactly where we're going. And a lot of people don't realize, maybe not in your first year, but by the second year, you might need to file quarterly tax. If you don't know what your tax liability is, you're not going to be able to do that. You could be hit with penalties and fees and all kinds of. We don't want that. We want to save you money. So that's another real important reason to be doing your bookkeeping. But like I said, most importantly, we can't manage what we don't measure.
Oh, that's a good one. We can't manage what we don't measure.
For
I'm
sure.
going to use that one.
I
That's a
didn't
good
make it
one.
up. I'm not sure where the quote came from, but I know it's ingrained in me, right?
It's
We
so true.
it's too easy to put our head in the sand, just cross our fingers, pray, hope for the best come tax time. And too many business owners do exactly that. But by then, it's way too late to make any meaningful changes that could save you money on your taxes or make or break your business. So, that monthly bookkeeping or even quarterly allows you to stay on top of your finances and gives you those tools you need to make those important decisions. You don't want to be you can't change what happened last year, right? We can only change what's happening now in the present. So having that information, I know a lot of what the it's not when you think of bookkeeping, a lot of people think of, like, oh, it's just a side thing that maybe the receptionist can do or what have you. But our new world of bookkeeping is not just looking back on what happened, last month, but using that information to look forward on how we can make those changes. So that's our bookkeeping for the new millennia.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's funny because I am approaching, and I know you and I have talked about this before, but I'm approaching the time of year, actually it already passed, but I had a lot going on, where I began kind of my growth strategy for the following year.
Yeah.
And, everyone has been asking for that content. So in December, I'm going to be like plowing out content about how to kind of create that growth strategy. And as I've been, kind of documenting that content and getting ready for that, I realized that the first step, and you know me, I break everything down into steps. So step one for me, in order to even create that growth strategy, is I do a full day of assessment and analyzing data in my business. I analyze my books. I analyze my customer feedback. I analyze my conversion rates and my numbers, and I pull all of those things. And one of the biggest pieces of that is my books. Like for me to even create what products I need to launch, what pricing I need to put out there, where I need to focus my attentions, what new revenue streams need to come in. It is always based off of what my numbers say from my books. I can't set a sales goal if I don't know where my profitability has been the year before, my revenue has been the year before. I can't cut expenses and get more money if I don't know where they are before. So,
and isn't that such a mindset shift, rather than thinking of it as something annoying, like I have to do, I have to know, rather than thinking of it as something I get to do that, because then I get those tools to be able to make those decisions, to be able to set those goals, to be able to really like grow the business and look forward. So I think that's kind of a shift there, that you look at it as positive, right? Like I have these numbers, I can make these decisions, and I'm empowered to do that.
It's the sharpest tool in my toolkit. I have to tell you,
There you go.
it is critical to making those decisions. And oftentimes when I get the question, well, what should I make my pricing? What product should I launch? What should my products look like? I'm like, I don't know. Your numbers are going to tell you. This is how you can use those numbers in order to make those decisions. So I agree 100%. It is something that I dread and hate, that I tried to do for myself forever. And I just didn't know enough about, I don't know where my brain was, because I did take an accounting class and I know that they did all that stuff. But I was that girl in my accounting class that was like, Lord, please just let me get a C and get out of here, because I have to at least get a C. And I've never been a C student, actually would like cry if I got a C, but accounting, and I had an amazing professor. So it wasn't even like I could blame him. Sometimes you can say, my teacher sucked, so I didn't understand. I literally, he brought us pizza. He broke it down to normal. My brain just couldn't understand it. And so I want to start with answering some of the basic things, so that people can begin to understand the differences between those. And that is, what are the different types of bookkeeping methods? There's always that question when you're in your software or even on your taxes or whatever, where they ask you, kind of what your bookkeeping method is. And I think it's, cash accrual or something like that. So what are the main ones, and what are the differences between them?
So yes, that's exactly right. You get an A+ for that.
Hey!
cash and accrual.
I just know that I go with cash. I don't even really know what accrual is. I just say cash.
So cash bookkeeping is, we do see that most companies, most small businesses use cash accounting. And what that is basically we recognize that revenue when we receive it, and we recognize expenses when they're paid out. So if you think about, if let's say you sign a contract with someone and they're going to pay you $20,000, you, in cash accounting, you recognize that until you actually get the money in the bank.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it's literally as it's coming into the bank, as it's going out of the bank or a credit card or what have you.
So like in real time.
That's when we recognize. Exactly.
When you want to know what's going on in real time. So accrual then is? Accrual
is we recognize it when it's incurred. So if for that example of the $20,000 invoice, you're going to be receiving this $20,000. They sign on the dotted line. That's the day you recognize that $20,000. If that date,
you haven't gotten it.
Right. If that date is December 31st and you don't get that money until January 7th, you're paying taxes on it for the previous year, December 31st.
So why would someone use accrual? It sounds like you wouldn't want to use it.
So
who uses accrual?
So here's the deal. So you can actually keep your books in accrual, but file your taxes in cash. The reason why, the the positives to using accrual. And that's really, accrual is more of the like the gold standard. It's what accountants want to see. Is because then you're recognizing what's really going on in your business. Like let's say you pay for a year's worth of insurance on December 31st. Well, that would be an expense in that year, but that insurance is actually going to be, if you do
Dude,
accrual, then you're breaking out that amount for each month
gotcha.
going forward. So then you can really see when you're pulling up those reports what your expenses were. So if you did cash accounting, you see that monthly amount for things like let's say you prepay your rent, you prepay your insurance, you wouldn't see those monthly amounts. Those would all come out in one chunk on one report. So maybe December looks upside down, but then January, February, you would never see those amounts. So in accrual accounting, it really gives you a better picture of where you're actually at as far as monthly expenses.
Gotcha. And I feel like you would be able to maybe also have a better concept of what your cash flow is going to be if you are using accrual. Is that correct? Is that assumption correct? Is my
What
brain
your,
working right?
sorry, it cut out right as you
Like
said that. What your what is going to be?
your cash flow, that cash flow
Yeah.
report. So if you're using accrual, I feel like the cash flow report would be more accurate almost because
So technically the cash flow report takes into that account. The cash flow report brings together the balance sheet and the profit and loss to show where your money went, your actual physical cash went each month. But what accrual does is allows you to make those plans. Like if you have a contract that's going to go for the next 12 months and it's going to pay you $20,000. Well, if you're with accrual basis, then you see how much each portion per month. So you can make those plans because technically, if you sign that contract and you recognize that $20,000 as income, and then something happens and the contract gets canceled and you have to pay back, then it's really income then.
okay, gotcha.
So
So
when you,
the reason why most small businesses then would use, cash is because it's for me, it feels more real that it's occurring like right now.
right, it's
Yeah.
easier. And there's things like journal entries that need to be done when you're using accrual. There's,
Oh,
like you got to take into account those when you pay for your insurance, it's not an expense, it's actually becomes a prepaid asset, a prepaid expense asset. So
mm,
then you have, use that, take a chunk of that and expense it each month and what have you. Same deal with if you recognize that $20,000 income, you have to then make that a liability because, like I said, if a
they
few
have to
months down
pay
the
the cash.
road that gets canceled, you have to pay back.
Mm,
Then yeah, so it's
gotcha.
a little more difficult, and but it's more accurate as far as what's really going on in the business. But then you can turn around and file taxes in cash basis if you don't want to pay for that $20,000 December 31st if you're not getting it till January 7th. So
Gotcha.
you have
So,
to,
so just to keep it
declare with.
really simple for our newer entrepreneurs, the best method to choose would probably be cash. It's just going to be easier for them.
It's the easiest method. Now, we do have a kind of amalgamation of the two, and that's called the modified cash basis, which is cash, but we also take into account accounts payable, which is your bills that you need to pay, and your accounts receivable, which is the money coming in you need to receive. So in true cash basis, we don't look at accounts payable or accounts receivable at all. In modified cash basis, we look at, okay, you also will have this money coming in or you will have this money going out. So you need to take that into account when making your decisions.
Okay. All right. Well, awesome. Okay. So when I talk about setting up the financial structure for new businesses, especially,
Mhm,
I always kind of start with obviously getting your tax ID, setting up your business bank account, which is absolutely important.
mhm.
And for those of you out there, if you have more questions about business bank accounts and some options that are out there for you, I'm going to go ahead and link to a video right now that I recently did on the top 10 business bank accounts and what to kind of look for in those business bank accounts if you're still in that process. But no matter what, you want to set up your business bank account.
Please.
You want to make sure that you have that. You don't want to commingle your money. And the biggest reason why you don't want to commingle your money is what?
the piercing the veil.
Yeah.
The you don't want to have any, if you get audited, you don't want to have any reason for them to want to look into your personal accounts. So the more that you use your business account as a personal account, the more reason they'll have to say, well, obviously there's no real separation here between you and your business, so we want more information. So
Absolutely.
we only want to give them the information they need, period. So that's,
Right.
you don't,
And I've actually used that word, piercing the corporate veil, because as
yeah,
soon as you begin to commingle, it basically, like I said, makes your personal assets liable for your business. And it kind
right,
of defeats the purpose
right,
of then being registered as a limited liability company, because you do that so that you can
right.
protect your personal assets in the event that something happens with your business. But when you commingle the money, you've literally said, well, I know I got this registration done for the liability protection, but the way I'm acting
Hmm.
is different. So I really don't have that liability protection, right?
And it makes your bookkeeper cry.
It makes your bookkeeper cry. It does. It does. So once someone gets their business bank account set up, the next step that I always tell them to do is to get financial software. And the reason why I say that is because I know back in the day, I think my very first business that I actually officially thought was a business, and that's a whole different story. But I was trying to keep track of everything with, like, all these receipts and this Excel spreadsheet, and it was an absolute nightmare. And I was so grateful and thankful when I got a clue and realized that financial software could and would make my life easier
Hmm.
and give me more information. So I always tell people to get their financial software and to connect their financial software so that it begins to kind of pull and track almost
Hmm.
their monthly transactions.
Hmm.
It just makes it easier to really manage what expenses you have and what revenue you have if everything is going in and coming out of that business bank account, and that
Yeah.
financial software can kind of track it. So I always recommend QuickBooks, and the reason why I recommend QuickBooks, and specifically QuickBooks Online, is because I think when I first tried to find cheaper ways to do it with different softwares, um, I found very quickly that I was sometimes out there on an island on my own. Not that they didn't do similar
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
but it came time for me to actually scale my organization and involve bookkeepers and
Right.
accountants. They had no idea what the heck
Yeah.
software I was using. And it really wasn't better. I mean, it really wasn't
Right.
better than what QuickBooks Online could provide. It's
Hmm.
just back in the day, there was no online. I had to like go to the store and buy that software and like put it on my computer.
Yes. Yep.
Before it was online, I had to
Did
like
you ever
go
use
buy them.
Quicken?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did. I did use Quicken. Oh my
Yeah.
God, yes, we are aging ourselves. Now. We're
Oh
aging
my goodness.
ourselves. But do you agree that QuickBooks Online is an amazing financial software for
I do.
people to really tap into?
I do. You're gonna run into issues with any software. Obviously, like nothing is perfect. And the thing I appreciate as an accountant with QuickBooks is they do listen when we have, suggestions for things that need to be made better. But yes, as far as I actually learned bookkeeping using software called Zero, which is also great. I think Zero is great for what it is. I quickly migrated to QuickBooks Online. And there's, you can just Google and find 27 answers to every
Yeah.
question you have. You can call their customer support, you can call a pro advisor. There's so much help available for QuickBooks Online that I definitely agree that is your easiest option there.
Yes, and if you guys want to, I'll make sure that we've got links to all the stuff that we're talking about in the description box below. So make sure that you check that out. But people are like, okay, I got QuickBooks. I know people who have QuickBooks. They set it up, they listen to me. They're like, okay, CP, I'm going to do this. And then they download the software and they're completely overwhelmed by what it is that they're supposed to do. So
Yeah.
what I'd like to do is to kind of talk a little bit about the first steps that people, once they download their software and they do, they have it, they've signed up for, and I think it's like $13 a month or something for like the minimum
The
package. So
simple, yeah.
there's really no,
Self-employed. whatever. Yeah.
There's no excuse
Right.
years for not having the software, because if you don't think that your financial structure is worth $13 a month, and I think even the next level up is like $25 a month, right? $13 a month. Don't let me, you know what? I think this might be an Asher moment. And I'm going to make sure that, he's resting right now, but I'm going to not interrupt him, but I'm going to say this is an Asher moment. And when you see Asher, it means
Asher, as referred to in the Urban Dictionary as Asher syndrome, means the distinct inability to get your shit together.
exactly. You've got to get your shit together. Do not waste any more effort, time, or energy or tears not spending 13 to 25 bucks a month on getting your financial software. Get it, sign up for it, connect it, and then Michelle is going to walk us through some of the first steps in making sure that you've got it where a way that you can function in it as you begin to build out your team and look for good bookkeeping services. Because I never recommend, unless you have a financial background and unless you have an accounting background, that I think that your first outsourcing task, your first outsourced role in your organization will and should be bookkeeper. I'm just going to go there. Sometimes people say administrative assistant. I say bookkeeper because you may think that it's not immediate tasks that you need to have handled, but they are immediate. You've just been putting them off. And by the time someone gets involved, if it's been so long and you've never done anything, they're going to charge you a ton of money to get your books cleaned up. That's a whole separate thing, right? So why it's like when you're driving around and your brakes need to get fixed in your car.
You hear the squealing. Yes.
You hear the squealing and you just procrastinate and you wait. And by the time you wait, it's all the way to your rotors and what could have been 400
brakes, rotors, calipers.
Yes, everything, right? So that's the same thing in bookkeeping. So once they get their software, right? What are the first few things that a new entrepreneur should do in order to get it ready for them to even in the first few months be able to kind of reconcile or do things themselves, but also as they look to build out their team?
So yeah, you definitely want to, like you said, connect that banking institution. You have your separate bank. You've already opened your business bank account. You want to connect that to your QuickBooks or whatever software. You want to connect that so it starts bringing in those transactions. Now, when I say bring in the transactions, it doesn't mean that those transactions are automatically in your books. What it's doing is it's recognizing transactions and pulling them in, but you still have to do something with those transactions. You have to tell QuickBooks, the gas expense? Was this a meals expense? Was this office supplies? What have you? QuickBooks will learn, and it does. I mean, it's got tons of AI and all that good stuff. So it will give you suggestions of how to categorize things as well. And it will learn as you're going, if you have like a vendor that it doesn't recognize, it will start recognizing those. And I could get into creating rules and all kinds of stuff. But the point being, you get those transactions into the software so that it's in there so that you can start creating full reports. So yeah, that's really the first number one.
Yeah. And you mentioned it's not going to put it in the categories for you. It's going to pull in the transactions.
Right.
And so when you say categories, this was something that I had to do a ton of Googling to figure out, right? It's QuickBooks will have in it, and it's called your
chart of accounts.
Chart of accounts. That's right. Yeah. Chart of accounts. And that's where you kind of put the categories of income and of expenses that you have in your business.
So when you're setting it up, asking you all these questions and you're like, oh, I don't want to answer any more questions about it. When you're doing that, it's actually helping to create your chart of accounts. So answer those questions the best you can as far as what your business does, what you're looking to do with the software, what industry you're in, all those things, because they will build you a chart of accounts on the back end. Some bookkeepers don't like QuickBooks chart of accounts and they just delete it and start fresh with their own. I have found it to be very intuitive. I think they're doing a really great job on popping those accounts. There will be accounts you'll never use and you can make those inactive. But for the most part, I think they're doing a really good job of listening to the business owners and what they need and creating that chart of accounts for them, because it is overwhelming. To create a chart of accounts from scratch would be insane. No,
it is.
Don't do that.
And you know what's so funny? People always ask me, where do I get my chart of accounts from? Well, first, what I've learned is that QuickBooks will give you kind of a start, a really good start. But you also, as a business owner, and I teach this in my startup academy, is that you really do have to, when you're building your business and you're setting it up initially, have an idea of what types of expenses you're going to have, because it's not going to be standard for every single business,
Right.
and what type of revenue you're going to expect, and kind of create a budget for yourself, and kind of estimate and do some research in order to get as close as possible to reality. But that budget that you created, and what I like to say is that second step in starting your business, which is doing your research and kind of mapping out your business model and figuring everything out, and choosing, kind of your mission and your vision. That second step of doing your research, you're going to learn what various things that you plan on doing in your business is going to cost you. And when you learn that, you then can begin to build a budget. You know that if your business is a product-based e-commerce business, that you're going to have some expenses that other businesses aren't going to have, like, inventory stuff or
Amazon fees.
Yeah. If you're making candles to sell, you're gonna have wax as an expense, which is, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of what I have learned over the years about costs of goods sold and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Crazy.
Yep.
And you guys can reach out to Michelle for all those kind of crazy questions, and we'll make sure that you have access to being able to reach out to her, because she's a very, very good bookkeeper with a CFO mentality. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But what I did say is, for people, your chart of accounts, QuickBooks is going to give you a basic one, which is really just, if you break down what the chart of accounts is, it's the categories of expenses and the categories of income, which is kind of how you're going to ultimately move things around. But your budget will be a great basis for you to figure out if there's something missing from what QuickBooks has suggested for you. And QuickBooks may suggest something that you were missing that you didn't think of
Exactly.
your budget, right?
And I know we've talked too about, like you might have just a general services income line, but you want to see, no, I want to see what I'm making from coaching versus the books I sell versus speaking versus those kinds of things. So yeah, that's definitely something that you can personalize and add to create that chart of accounts that you want to see. It's the backbone. Right. Yes. Oh, yes. And it doesn't have to be set in stone when you start. And a lot of people think that too. You can literally create accounts on the fly as you're going. If you got a new expense and you're like, well, shoot, that's an event expense, but I don't have event expenses as a line. Create it. You can make it right there. And like, it's really the backbone of what you want to see on your reports. That's what it is. So you got to think about exactly that when you're creating your budget, when you're thinking about, how do I want to see this broken down? That's your chart of accounts.
And sometimes you don't even know. I was just having this conversation with a coachee, because I am coaching her through, we're creating her processes. And, I told her, I said, you need a CEO retreat. You need to go away and you need to kind of figure out and start to work on building these things. I said, and the one thing that I want you to do is, when you are looking at your financials and you're in that assessment piece of your growth strategy planning, when you're going through your financials, I want you to also make a note of what you cannot see in your financials, so that you know how to update and correct your books for the following year. And that's what helps me know, because I can't make a decision on whether or not a certain consulting service is profitable. And then when I'm growth strategy planning, I'm like, should I get rid of this particular service right here? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because I didn't track the income for it. And I also didn't track what expenses are directly related.
Or sometimes you're just looking at one piece. Well, that cost me a lot of money, but it also made me a lot of money, but I can't see that because of,
Exactly. So that helps me every year kind of tweak what I want my books to look like. And I don't know if I've ever gone a year without making some kind of tweak, because I think that when you're in the growth phase and you're adding different ideas or products or services, the following year, you may have some additional kind of charts, right? So but that is definitely a piece of advice that I give to folks, is don't feel crazy if you don't think of everything right away, because as you grow and as you evaluate your business financially, on a quarterly, monthly, or annual basis, you will really say, you know what, next month I need to see this, and I need to be able to see that. And that's kind of what you base it around. So there's no like cookie cutter way for your chart of accounts to look. It's really based upon what information you need to see as the entrepreneur so that you can make good decisions in your business.
I do want to caution one thing though, as far as from what I've seen, I've seen some crazy charges accounts. And one thing people get confused on is they think they need they need an account for their vendors. So like they'll have an account for Menards, an account for Home Depot, an account.
Mm,
That is not what the chart of accounts is. What we want to do is like we want to code all that to, in that case, either repairs and maintenance or supplies and materials or whatever the nature of that is. That's what we want to see in the chart of accounts, not the individual vendors. So I do caution not to go crazy.
right.
Like CP said, make those tweaks as you're going along, but don't go crazy at the beginning and think you need all these accounts. It can get confusing. It can get a
Too
little,
detailed.
yes. So
I've
I
I've
saw
made that mistake too.
manufacturing, if you've seen a chart of accounts for a manufacturing company, it's insane.
I'm
It's
sure.
very overwhelming. And they like literally line items for everything. It's great, they need that information, but and most small businesses, most startups, we don't need to see tons and tons of things, but the things that will make the difference. Like we said, you have an income stream, you want to know what that's bringing in versus what that's costing you. That's definitely something you want to put on your chart of accounts.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, how hopefully that gave you guys a little bit of an idea around when you first connect that software, to remove that fear so that you actually connect it. And then you
Please.
can ultimately, and the earlier you get a bookkeeper involved, the better. Because they will help you work through some of those things. So, even if you just get a bookkeeper to help you set up your
Yes,
account and you say, you know what, I can't use you ongoing right now, but I would like to find out how much you charge just to help me set up my accounts and to help me clean everything up or whatever it is.
absolutely.
Bookkeepers do that as well, right, Michelle?
Absolutely. And getting set up right is key because it's so much easier to get it going, getting and get those things in place and almost get things almost in an automatic way. Because we can set up, like if you're in e-commerce, we can connect Shopify to QuickBooks, that kind of thing. We can get all that set up. So therefore, it's so much less work later for you, your bookkeeper, or your accountant, and
Yeah.
therefore cost less.
So one more thing that I want to make sure that we talk about a little bit is kind of what a month would look like, right? So when you go in and you're working with a client and you are going to kind of, and we're going to kind of keep it as simple as possible. But more for our newer entrepreneurs, but when they are, kind of categorizing, right?
Mm,
I always use the word reconcile. And then I know that reconciling also includes like going to your bank statements and matching
yeah,
everything up. So I'm not going to talk about that, but I mean, just even categorizing. So when you look at someone's books at the end of the month, and if they've been doing a good job at using their business bank account for everything, like
hmm
using their debit card when they've got appropriate business expenses, and having all of their revenue deposited into their business account. And let's say, so now October 31st, our month is ending. So
hmm
tell me what you're going to do or what they should do if they're trying to do it themselves before they actually get a bookkeeper, at least to get a good picture in the
yeah.
month of November. What should they do?
Well, first thing, like I said, you make sure you categorized all the transactions. The second and I think most important thing is doing exactly that, is reconciling. A lot of people are scared of that, but it's literally just looking at the bank statement versus what you have in the software. Because while the bank feed is amazing, it brings in like with, I would say, probably 90% accuracy. Sometimes it'll bring in a transaction twice, or sometimes it'll skip a few days of transactions. So you don't want to create reports and look at that and call that, this is what it is if you haven't reconciled. Reconciling is like bookkeepers' main reconcile, reconcile, reconcile is what I tell my clients all the time, or my potential clients, or when I'm speaking in webinars and that sort of thing. Is please reconcile. I know it's scary. I know we don't do that normally with our personal accounts. We don't want to look through it. We don't do that. But it's QuickBooks makes it so easy with the tools there to reconcile and make sure that all the transactions that actually took place are recorded in your software. Once you get that done and you're reconciled, there's no transactions outstanding. There's not, unless it's like a check you wrote that hasn't been cashed yet. But other than that, like if it's a credit card, if a thing came through the bank feed that you purchased something on a credit card, it's not reconciling. Well, that should have happened pretty quickly. So then it's, well, what's going on here? And I don't know how many times I've found where people were charged 2 or 3 times for a credit card purchase that they didn't realize because
Yeah.
they never look, they had no idea. So it can save you tons just by reconciling. Once you've reconciled, you make sure all of your information is correct. Then you can start to look at something like a profit and loss, which is also known as an income statement. You can take a look at that and be able to see what came in, what went out, what your income and expenses are. And a balance sheet that is, I think a lot of people don't look at a balance sheet. I think P&L is what most business owners look at, but your balance sheet shows you, your balance sheet shows you 3 things. It shows you what you own, which is your assets, including your bank accounts. It shows you what you owe, which is your liabilities, what needs to be paid out, credit cards, that kind of stuff, and what's left over, which is known as the equity. That's your equity in your company. So the balance sheet is really important. It's something you definitely want to look at because the profit and loss doesn't give you the full picture. If you're purchasing, let's say you're purchasing homes or whatever, if you're purchasing giant assets, if you're purchasing big equipment or what have you for your business, that's not going to show up on your profit and loss. At least it shouldn't.
Right.
It's purchasing an asset is going to show up on your balance sheet. So that is another very important tool that you'll need to take a look at, and if you've coded everything right. And then, like we talked about the statement of cash flows earlier, that brings the two together. That shows you exactly what really happened in your business with cash. It shows you cash at the beginning of the period, cash at the end of the period. So you can really follow exactly where your money went and where it came from.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was just reading an article, maybe it was 2 days ago, that Tyler Perry fired his entire accounting team.
I saw that.
Because they overpaid like the IRS
$9 million or something.
$9 million.
Yep.
And while, I was talking to my friend about it and she was like, oh my God, that's so intense. And, she was more talking about the fact that they overpaid him. And what I was more impressed by was the fact that he figured it out.
Yeah.
Because that is something, I've seen it like back in the day, like TLC, you heard about all the artists that like ended up like, going to jail behind taxes or didn't even know what was going on with their money or was broke.
Or owed millions. And
yes, they left everything up to their accountant or their bookkeeper. And so, I always tell entrepreneurs, and, I want to get your opinion on this, is you have to know enough to be dangerous.
Right.
And so you have to choose a partner that is, and I've had several bookkeepers in my day. All right. I've had bookkeepers that didn't even know that I knew what I knew. And, I realized because I knew what I knew and I was like, requesting things that I knew, that they weren't a good fit for me because they weren't a partner, right? They weren't someone that I could say that would help me learn what to do with it and learn how to analyze it and ultimately figure it out so I could make better decisions in my business.
Right.
And I said, I'm more impressed. She was like, what do you mean? I said, I'm impressed that he even recognized it.
Yeah. That's
that
amazing.
He even knew. That meant that he, even though he didn't go to school.
Because he's a busy man.
Oh my God, he's so busy. But I'm like, the fact that he recognized it just really reiterates what I always say is, as an entrepreneur, you may not be a bookkeeper, you may not be an accountant, you may not be a finance person, but you need to know enough to be dangerous in order to recognize, number one, what you want, what you need, and then also what's really happening with your money, right?
Right. I love it when my clients ask me questions. I so enjoy that. I do create the reports. I have some clients they barely contact me at all. They're happy. They're okay, great, everything's great, fine. But I love it when clients ask me questions and want, well, what can we do here? Like, how can we, like, what are the options? Have you seen any options for this or that? Yes. Yes, let's talk.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And when you're a new entrepreneur, if I had to give you guys a process of, because that's what I do, give you a process of what I did in the very beginning and how I kind of like to work with my bookkeeping team is, at least once a quarter, like I receive my reports on a monthly basis and I go in and I take a look at them. And I will begin to like make conclusions and draw down things. But once a quarter, my bookkeeper and I like to get in a meeting and say, all right, so based upon the last 3 months, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And how should I be interpreting this? So that's
Right.
how you're going to learn. So don't just think to yourself, oh my God, finance and bookkeeping is this extra task. On a monthly basis, I've got blocked off around the 15th of every month, whatever that Friday is. My Friday is kind of like my work on my business day. I try to avoid a lot of appointments and things like that, unless they're on my team to work on the business. So I usually do
Mm-hmm.
meet with my team on Friday, but around the 15th, I go in, I look at my previous month numbers. I give myself an hour, block it off of my calendar. This is my finance hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I can also, like look if there's outstanding, transactions that need to be categorized and my bookkeeper doesn't know what they are. Go in and do all of that stuff.
Right.
And then take a look at it, jot down my questions, and know that I've got, whether it's next month or this month or a couple months from now, some time set aside with my financial team
Mm-hmm.
to answer those questions and say, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm planning on doing in the fourth quarter. This is what I'm planning on doing next quarter. What do we need to do to make sure that we can really see if this works or not?
Yeah.
Because
And as a bookkeeper, I love knowing those goals. I love knowing what we're headed towards, because that way, if I see something come up that's like, whoa, this is not right. This is not in line with your goals, then I know to flag that for you right away.
okay.
For 3 months later, oh shoot, what was that? What was I thinking? It got me off track. No,
Yeah.
we know, and when I know my clients' goals and where they're headed, then I can help them make those decisions as well.
Because so much of being a successful entrepreneur is oftentimes trial and error,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
And that trial and error really boils down to the money. I mean,
Hmm.
unless you're, I don't even know, even if you're a nonprofit, it boils down to the money. So, it's like, if you don't know what's going on with the money, you
Right.
can't make those decisions.
Right.
And now I want to, kind of, this is a perfect transition into finding the right partner. Because I know I've mentioned that, and that I've been on the hunt for the perfect partner for probably my entire life. And I've got an amazing accountant. I would never change him for the world.
Hmm.
Is truly a partner on the accounting side. And it took me a while to find him.
Hmm.
And now I've got a perfect partner in a bookkeeping relationship, which is so important. And
Absolutely.
I've talked about some of those things that you really want to look for in a partner. What do you think? Because you are in bookkeeping world, right? You work
Right.
with tons of different people in bookkeeping.
Right.
So if you had to give the CPTV family, 3 things or 2 things or 1 thing, or whatever you think would be the big things that you want to look for
Hmm.
in a bookkeeping partner, what would it be?
Right. So first off the bat, interview them. Not all bookkeepers are the same. There are bookkeepers still just, doing the numbers and being, like they're not all bookkeepers want to necessarily provide that kind of next level service. So
Yeah.
definitely interview, talk to them, ask them about their client communication, ask them what tools they use, what their tech stack looks like, so that you can get an idea, is this in line with what I want to do? I know CPs had a problem with past bookkeepers where you weren't able to contact them. You weren't able to just have a face-to-face when you needed to,
It's,
right? So,
I don't even function that way. I'm like, what? Can't we just get on a phone call?
right. Simple, like, or text or something, like you talk to your bookkeepers, ask, like, or your potential bookkeeper, ask, is that, like, how do they communicate? What's their best way? Do they only have certain hours? Do they only have certain days of the month or what have you? You talk to them about that. I will say, as far as the bookkeeping industry and being in this for close to 7 years now, I found it to be the most collaborative industry I've ever been involved with.
Mm,
Bookkeepers, like you mentioned, I'm involved in the Digital Bookkeeper Association. I'm involved in several other bookkeeping groups. We all bounce ideas off each other. We get help from each other. If there's a client that comes to me that I just cannot help, like it's, so far out of my normal processes, and something that really needs some extra, help or what have you, I know where to go to find that help for them.
mhm.
Um, and put them in touch with each other. So, I'm not going to hire somebody else for somebody, but I can put you in touch with other people. There's also the QuickBooks. They have the Find a Pro Advisor. You want to look on that, make sure you're checking to see, because that includes accountants and bookkeepers. Check to see, what they do, exactly what they do. And like I said, talk to them. interview them, have a conversation. You don't want to just like, I hear so many people, it's like doctors, like some people are like, oh, I'll just pick the closest doctor and go there. No, talk to the doctor. Is the doctor like,
Yes.
are they in line with what you want and what you need? I have clients that, like I said, have a high need to know. They have questions. They want, yes, great. Let's meet. Let's go over it. Let's look at, and I'm not perfect. Maybe I categorize something wrong, like by all means, I'd love to help you out with that. Like I can easily change those and learn and grow with you. So yes, as far as finding that partner, like I said, if it's not me, I'd be happy to help you find it as well. Or the QuickBooks Pro Advisor, find a Pro Advisor site.
Yeah. I would 100% agree. I just had this conversation with another coachee because she is contemplating making a change with her bookkeeper.
Mhm.
And I told her, she said, why did you switch? Why have you switched in the past?
Mhm.
Because she didn't want to feel like she was pulling the trigger on switching,
Mm.
because in her mind, it was just going to be too cumbersome to switch.
Mm.
And I said to her, no, listen, as an entrepreneur, your team needs to be full of partners, people
Yeah.
who want to help your business grow. And the biggest decision that I ever made around my financial team is I have to surround myself with people who are focused on empowering me and being a part of the team that really feel passionate about my business getting to that next level, which means that they can't be a bookkeeper who's just a bookkeeper. They have to be a bookkeeper that almost has a CFO mentality. So for
Mhm.
me, I found that I prefer, and this is a CP thing, but this is something that you may want to consider, is I prefer to work with bookkeepers and accountants who are entrepreneurs as well.
Yes.
And the reason why I do that is because if you're an entrepreneur and I'm an entrepreneur, we feeling the same thing every day. And
Right.
you're analyzing and looking at it from a CEO's perspective. And so when we meet and we have a conversation, it's almost like a mastermind brainstorming session,
Right.
and not like because I'm able to give them input and feedback on marketing or how to attract more clients or automation or whatever it is that I do. And then they're able to say, and we can do this over here. And it looks like, this over here, if you can just push this particular affiliate income a little bit more, it'll make your affiliate income
Right.
95% profitable. And that narrowing down, you have too many, or you have an affiliate over here that you get $40 from,
Yeah.
how and the work that's going into it's not even profitable for you. So get rid of that or whatever it is. So I always say, looking for a partner, you want a real partner, and
Absolutely.
you want someone who can help you from a mental perspective, a learning perspective. I've learned what I know about finances in business from working with the right partners over the years. And someone who's comfortable in that. So I would 100% agree with you, Michelle. And while some bookkeepers don't do that, that for me just means that they're not a good bookkeeper for me to
Right.
work.
Exactly. We're not all created the same for
No, you
sure.
can do what you want to do, but
Right.
you aren't going to typically work together.
Mhm.
And so I wanted
Oh,
to ask you, because I know I'm going, no, go ahead. You
I
had,
would. I just remember I talked about the Digital Bookkeepers Association. They also have a directory, and
nice.
the Digital Bookkeepers Association. That is the mentality of the Digital Bookkeepers Association, is that new way of thinking about bookkeeping, not just what happened in the past, but looking towards the future. That's their big, like mindset and I their
Yeah,
goal,
yeah,
right, is to
yeah.
create these bookkeepers who are doing that for their clients. So that's another great resource for finding a bookkeeper as well.
And Digital Bookkeeper Association can be found. We're going to go ahead and link to that right down here. You'll see that link so that you can check it out. And we'll go ahead and make sure that you have that Digital Bookkeepers Association. But aside from that, Michelle, do you have room in your client catalog to accept new clients?
Always, yes.
Awesome.
My company, as I've been so fortunate to grow mostly by word of mouth, and for referrals from other clients and from accountants as well. So I'm building a team as well to help out more and more clients. That's my goal, is to help as many clients as possible. So absolutely, I'd love to have a conversation.
Absolutely. So where, and I'm going to tell you guys, just from CP, I would 100% recommend Michelle.
Thank you.
She's going to meet all of those needs that we just talked about from a partner perspective. And also, just so you know, bookkeeping from Michelle, even though she does all of work, it is extremely affordable and worth it. Okay. So the ROI that you will see from being able to make better decisions about your business, that you can grow your revenue each month by what Michelle charges, and she'll pay for herself. So don't get all crazy and weird about, oh my God, this is CP's bookkeeper. Is she going to be crazy expensive? No, she's not crazy expensive. She is right there where it's standardized there. She has different packages available depending upon where you are in your entrepreneurial journey. I would 100% recommend that you reach out to Michelle, and then you don't have to interview a bunch of people. I'm telling you that she's going to give you what you need and be that partner for you. You heard in her bio, she's like, starting to branch out and offer CFO services. So to have a CFO minded person built into your bookkeeping, absolutely crazy. So if you've been looking for a bookkeeper, we're going to link to Michelle's information in the description below. You can also find her at the link that's going across the bottom of the screen right now. Check out her website. And then you can also initially just click that link and plug yourself into her calendar for her to do an initial strategy consultation and a needs assessment for you. And where else can people find you on social besides your website? Are you on social?
I am. I'm on Facebook, Crane Chat Solutions on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Michelle Crane and Crane Chat Solutions is both on LinkedIn. I do have an Instagram, but I don't really do any much on Instagram. Sorry.
We're going to work
It's
on
there, but yes, absolutely feel free to reach out. My number is on my website. My like I said, my calendar is there. I'd love to just have that conversation for sure. And I love what you said about it's really bookkeeping. Don't think of it as an expense. You think of it as an investment because it's going to give you that sharpest toolbox to help you make those decisions.
Absolutely. I can't even tell you the stress that you're probably feeling around not knowing what's going on with your money is enough of a motivation. And don't look at me like you ain't having no stress, because I know you are. Is there one thing or one big piece of advice that you want to leave the CPTV audience with before I head back to the studio and give my final words of wisdom?
My biggest thing is just don't be scared of it. I know numbers are scary. I get it. I get the finances. It sometimes sounds like you're speaking a different language. I understand 100%. But if you find the right person to partner with you, they can explain it exactly as you need to hear it. And sometimes that's different for everyone, but I like to find the right wavelength so we can be really communicating about, because it is so important. It's just so important to know what your numbers are. Don't put your head in the sand. You can't manage what you don't measure, right? So you got to really make sure that you're keeping an eye on things and be like Tyler Perry.
Yes, be like Tyler Perry, save yourself $9 million.
Yes.
Well,
For
thank
sure.
you so much for your time today. Don't forget, you guys can check out Michelle, set up a time. She does offer things like just getting your book set up. She does offer things like just, getting your books cleaned up for you. And then obviously ongoing bookkeeping services that are absolutely critical to your business. So make sure you check her out at the links in the description below, because you guys have been asking for this topic for so long. And I do have some CP impact tips that I'd like to share.